Hello friends and freundins, and welcome to the 6th episode of the Troglodyte channel. On this one, we conclude the trilogy of the Hetzer by making a small but rather tall diorama for it as a forever home. It looks pretty good, if I may say so. Come on, let me show you how I did it. The first thing I needed to do was to make a basic base. And for this I used a piece of XPS foam, the brand of which I do not know, all I know is that it was free. I used my hot wire cutter and cut it something by something centimeters, I do not remember exactly, but I tried to keep it relatively square. I wanted my diorama small in extent but tall. The main element will be an old stone bridge covered in vegetation, built on top of rocks over a small stream. This will be the first stone bridge made of foam that I've ever done, and also I've never made a flowing stream before. Nor have I ever used that much vegetation on a diorama. So we will see how this will go. Once I had the basic base ready, I glued 3 pieces of foam together to make the bridge. I cut it according to the very precise dimensions that I took, and I drew the arch of the bridge with a pencil on the side. And then I went over it again with a black marker, so that it would be more visible. And I cut it in shape with the hot wire foam cutter. I liked the general look, but I wanted it to be a little bit taller, so I added some extra pieces of foam on the bottom. Now it looks much better, and the right angles are relatively straight. I marked the position of the rocks under the bridge, and I started shaping the stream. For the rocks, I didn't follow any specific pattern, and if they looked a little bit surreal, that's fine with me. After all, the whole diorama is imaginative. I'm not trying to depict any real scenes here. I carved the big pieces of rock and I glued them in place, and then I kept adding smaller pieces of foam until I had the shape that I liked. Next I gave the rocks a more rocky shape by rolling over them a ball of aluminium foil. I also made some plaster, in which I added a little bit of PVA glue for extra strength, and I cover the ground and the rocks with it. I added a few pebbles and stones and some dirt from the garden to create the ground texture. Then it was time for one of my most favorite parts of this video. The actual shaping and texturing of the bridge, which was, after all, the basic point of inspiration for this diorama. I took my pencil and started drawing the stones on the foam. Once I had the basic shapes, I would go over them again, but this time with more pressure applied on my pencil, so that the gaps could be visible and more lifelike. As I was going, I would add more holes and indentations and also cover any previous imperfections, which I tried to blend in with the overall pattern of the bridge. I filled in some of the ugly, unrealistic gaps, and then I went over the whole surface with my aluminium foil ball. Now it was time to paint it with the basic black acrylic. And once it was dry, I went over it again with my X-Acto knife and my pencil, carving out small details wherever I would find it necessary. I added another row of stones on the top of the bridge, so that it would look a little bit bulkier on the highest point of the arch. Once it was dry, I painted the whole thing with a dark grey acrylic. And thanks to the magic of editing, I managed to airbrush the ground and the rocks in light brown and light grey respectively. I added a lot more pebbles and stones all around, and then I went over everything with the homemade black wash. The stones of the bridge, I would paint each one of them individually in lighter colors. I used lighter tones because everything would get darker with the black wash afterwards. But before that, I stippled some white and yellow acrylics with my sponge to break the monotone look of the stones and give it a realistic, mossy-like appearance. The rocks on the ground were dry brushed with a light grey. And then a little bit more with a white acrylic. Which made them stand out in a beautiful way. And later they also took a stapling with the sponge, with white and yellow acrylics. After everything looked nice and reassuring, it was time to glue the bridge on its base. And I wish I could offer you a few seconds to look how this thing came so beautifully together. But I got really busy working on the frame of the diorama. I used balsa sheets 1 mm in thickness. Which I positioned on each side to trace the general shape. Then I would glue the sides individually and weight them down with dumbbells. Once it was solid, I would cover all of the existing gaps with an old, pretty much dry modeling paste and shape it with a knife to give it the appearance of stone. These edges of the balsa wood were painted later the same colors as the rest of the bridge. Afterwards, everything would come together with the help of the magical blackwash. All of the ugly gaps on the lower parts of the diorama, where the ground touches the balsa wood, were covered with dirt and small stones. And to make it more visually interesting, I added a couple of sticks to represent falling logs on the shores of the stream. Then some more dirt all around the bridge and of course on top of it. But before that, I painted the edges of the balsa wood in similar colors to their surroundings, so that they would look a little bit more harmonious in accordance with the rest of the scenery. Now I could finally proceed with the positioning of the vegetation in this tiny terrain. I bought this light green foliage, which I think will look nice on the bridge. My idea was to turn it into some kind of a climbing plant. Maybe some sort of poison ivy or something like that. First, I glued some bigger pieces on the edges. I began by using PVA glue, but I quickly turned into super glue, since that way it was much easier and much faster. Then I would take smaller pieces of foliage and glue them mostly in between the joints of the stones, in a way that would appear natural for a climbing plant to develop. The foliage was attached to some very thin strips of plastic that were of brown color and looked very much like roots if positioned correctly. So that's what I tried to do. I also placed a few other plants of dark green color in certain spots on the ground and some of them coming out of the rocks. Then I added some tufts of grass here and there, some more dirt to cover the imperfections, and I secured everything in place with watered down PVA glue. To the stones of the bridge I added some yellow moss from Vallejo Ground Effects by using a toothpick. Finally, some random sticks and leaves on the crossing of the bridge. The last thing to do was to create the river stream. Now, I've only done this once before in a smaller scale, but it turned out good. And I used this very same liquid glass material. I suppose liquid glass is the equivalent name for epoxy resin that this Greek brand chooses to use. I should also mention that this product is now 4 years old, so let's keep our fingers crossed. The ratio for the mixing of this material was about 60 to 40, and I also added a drop of dark blue. I blocked the edges of the stream with some low-quality duct tape. I carefully poured the mixture, and I hoped for the best. The instructions say that it takes 24 hours to dry, but this thing was ready in less than 10. And with the exception of an ugly-looking line left on the side of the stream, which happened because of the bad quality of the duct tape, it looked really clean and had very few bubbles in it. I believe this is due to the superior ancient Greek technology and engineering of this resin that the ancient Greeks managed to engineer in ancient Greece. I'm just kidding, of course. I was just lucky that the product managed to work properly after 4 years, and overall I was very satisfied and happy. So to celebrate, I planted a few reeds on the shore of the stream. I cleaned with isopropyl alcohol the unwanted line on the edge as best as I could. Cut the edges of the resin with an X-Acto knife and then applied some PVA glue on the surface. After I stapled it with the brush, I left it to dry. Then I painted the balsa frame around the diorama, which I will not show because I don't want to bore you. It's black acrylic on wood, nothing interesting there. I glued the Hetzer in place, added some more dust, and that was it. Once again, the troglodyte is satisfied with this one. I would also like to apologize for the bad lighting, but I am currently working on its improvement. So yeah, thank you for watching this troglodyte episode and I hope you liked it. If you did like it, you can like it even more by clicking the like button. Also, if you want to send me a message, please do so in the comment section. I never thought I would say this in a million years, but just a crazy thought, you could also subscribe. Once again, thank you friends and freundins. And don't forget, keep your head up, don't be afraid to stare the sun in the eyes. But not for too long, because you might get blind.